Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Surah Hud, chapter 11, verses 50 to 60 we will cover today. In today's presentation, the account of the nation of Ad will be covered. These are our references, and this is our contact in case there is any question or query. Recap verses 36 to 49. The account of the destruction of the nation of Nuh was covered in these verses in some detail. The main reason noted is the class discrimination which they practiced in their society, and this was considered to be the salient crime together with other imbalances in the society. We should keep this particular cause, the major cause which Quran gave, that is the class discrimination, in mind, because the subsequent accounts as well, we will see that Quran has gone for the major problem in that society, because of which there was a gross imbalance in that. Most people rejected the guidance of Allah, and ultimately a time arrived when Nuh and those who accepted Iman on his invitation were instructed to construct an ark in view of the impending heavy floods forecast for the area where they lived. A point in time had reached in the life of that nation where, due to their evil conduct, they were going to be punished for their deeds through the arrival of a natural event of heavy rain followed by flooding. When the construction of the ark was completed, the floods arrived as forecasted, and Nuh together with Mu'mineen embarked on it and sailed away to a safe place to start a new life under the guidance of Wahi. All those who opposed were drowned as they did not construct a boat to save themselves. In this account, the Quran also defines the concept of the family, i.e., those who accept Iman and come together, they form a new family. Because Quran does take into account the biological relationships, but it says and tells us to grow out of these biological relationships and become ideological relationships and form those, because those are stronger, because those are the ones which will take us to the life of the hereafter. And this takes priority over biological relationships. Those who do not accept Iman are excluded from the category of Mu'mineen. This presentation and overview. I have included this overview on the suggestion of some of our members, and we'll see how it goes. Just like the account of the people of Nuh, which we covered in the previous two presentations, we will briefly look at the account of the people of Ad, to whom the messenger Hud was sent with the guidance of Allah. He warned his people regarding the functioning of the law of requital and told them that they are on the wrong path of life, which will end up in their ruin if they did not change the course of their life. Firstly, they need to give up the man-devised laws and come under the umbrella of the divine laws. He directed their attention to various signs in the physical world, for example, farming with the help of rainwater. Then he informed them about the false gods that they believed in and followed. However, they did not wish to change their path and rejected the guidance of Wahi. This mutual argument and tussle continued for years between Hud and his people. A minority of people did accept Iman and formed a Jamaat. The remainder refused to accept Iman and rejected his invitation. So the Quran points to this issue, that take the number out of our head. It is not a question of that how many people have come to the Quran. What matters is who have come to the Quran and how strong they are in their Iman. They created fasad in the land through the abuse of power and were grossly unjust. As a consequence of their evil deeds, their destruction became assured and they became destroyed. The Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen, headed by the messenger Hud, were saved from this destruction as per the law of Allah. Now let us go to the first verse for our today's presentation. Same mankind, one consistent message of Allah through his messengers, the message of Tawheed. وَإِلَىٰ عَادٍ أَخَاهُمْ هُودًا قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مَا لَكُم مِّنْ إِلَٰهٍ غَيْرُهُ إِنْ أَنْتُمْ إِلَّا مُفْتَرُونَ. In the same way, Hud was sent as a messenger towards the people of Ad from among their own brethren. So, messenger Hud was one of them. He said to them that, O my people, obey only the laws of Allah. Other than him, there is none in the universe who is sovereign. Hence, no one else can be your ilah other than him. If you hold any other belief other than him, then this is your own self-concocted religion. Expanding on some salient points of this verse, continuing in the same theme, the Quran takes us to the next example from history. And geographical location is not important here. And that is why I did not go into that detail, because it just distracts us from the main theme of these verses, which is about the permanent values. And this time it is the people of Ad among whom the messenger Hud was sent, and he was from among them. So they were well acquainted with him in terms of his conduct and vision. His message to his people was in line with the wahi of Allah, i.e., to give up obedience of the man-made laws and come to the laws of Allah and live a life of human eminence free from fear and huzn. So the important point which is running through all these accounts is that if we live under man-made laws, then there is going to be imbalance in the societies in which we live, in the world in which we live, and this imbalance keeps increasing. It is never going to disappear. And that is the point which the Quran is making, that we should work for the laws of Allah and try to establish the system of Deen. Do not follow any other law and devote full attention to Allah and accept His sovereignty in the land. It is not acceptance in words, but has to be manifested in practical terms in the society. The functioning of the society needs to be based on the laws and values bestowed through wahi. And obviously, human beings are not going to accept these laws and values unless they are convinced about it. This means to not invent your own laws and values, as these create imbalances in the society. So there is a sort of empiricism there. There is an empirical evidence that the societies in which human beings live, which are based on man-made laws, are grossly unjust societies. So evidence is there. So those people who see the evidence, they need to then look for the alternative. Further reflections. Here we will briefly refer to the prominent crime of theirs, which the Quran has noted, just as with the people of Nuh. These people had acquired massive power in the land, which they misused for creating imbalances in the land. Because what happens is that the people who acquire power and are wealthy, then they keep accumulating it. They become greedy and they want more power. And as they acquire more power, the imbalances keep increasing in the society. And we are witnessing it in the world of today. The Quran charges them with their meaningless construction in the land. You build such structures on the hilltops as monuments which have no utility value. This is to satisfy their desire to display their superiority and power, a crime in the sight of the Quran. And this is very interesting. If we look into it and we see plenty of evidence around us, while poverty is multiplying in the world, we will see that in the developed world and even in the underdeveloped world, those people in power are somehow very fond of big buildings, big structures, big monuments, and some of those are quite meaningless, of no use to mankind. They were endowed with very high intellect and reasoning abilities, but did not use these within the remit of the permanent values and thus went astray. They used these to subjugate others and unleash tyranny in the land. And the Quran has used these words, وَإِذَا بَطَشْتُمْ بَطَشْتُمْ جَبَّارِينَ. When you exert your power, do use it like men of absolute power. That there is no balance. If power is used to relieve poverty or relieve injustice in the world, then that is a useful power. But if power is to subjugate people to more slavery, which is not approved by the Quran. This means that you do not let your iron grip go loose on the weak and feeble, so that your control and authority should stay put forever and ever. Because the whole aim of acquiring that power, such people, is to subjugate others and to persist with their own power. They don't want to give up that power. And as the power increases, they become more vulnerable that less that power is lost. So what they do is, because poor people and commoners are in majority, they try to formulate laws to control them more and more. And that is why with every passing day, their freedom becomes reduced, decreased. And we are watching that in the world of today. We should bear in mind that they indulged in other evil doings as well, but this is the main one to which the Quran has drawn our attention. So over here, 2 points come out. One is that they were doing construction to satisfy their ego which was not necessary and was not of any benefit to mankind. And second one, that they used unleashed power on commoners, on public, unhindered and without any limits defined. We can witness this behavior of powerful nations and people in the world in 2023. Next verse 1151, not expecting reward is a sign of the developed self. Messenger Huzn says, Ya qawmi la as'alukum alayhi ajran in ajriya illa alalladhi fatarani fala afala taqilun. O my people, whatever I say to you and whatever I wish for you, your good, for that I do not demand any recompense from you. My recompense and reward is with that Allah who has created me. If you make use of your intellect and reasoning even a little, then you will easily understand this matter, that the thing in which an individual has no personal benefit will only be based on sincerity. Further reflections. This aspect has been covered previously under verse 1129. Here too the messenger who tells his people that I expect my reward from Allah. And this should make you think rationally that I do not harbor any self-interest of my own glory and egoism in it. Aim here is far higher than the aims you have devised for yourselves. In the next part of the verse, the Quran has introduced another important aspect when it is stated, In ajri ya illa alalladhi fatarani. My reward is from none but him who created me. The wahi is from him as guidance because he has taken it upon himself to provide guidance to everything which he has created in the universe. And in another verse, Quran says, Rabbuna allazi ata kulla shay'in khalqahu summa hada. Our Rabb is he who gave to each created thing its form and provided guidance. And that is the point, that messenger who takes them right to the basic level, that when a child is born, it comes without any guidance, and now is the question that who provides him guidance. And as he lives his life, as far as the physical being is concerned, that is very obvious. He's going to look for his basic needs. But the issue is of his cognitive development for his self. And that is where the Quran draws our attention. And this is what to which the messenger who is drawing their attention. Then emphasis is on the use of intellect through the application of which these issues can be comprehended. There is an instruction for us to never to expect any rewards from fellow human beings on this path. If we did this, then we will become distracted and our self will not develop, which will lead to a waste of our efforts with no results. This is what the Quran declares as fahabitat amaluhum. And the rewards which we get by following the Quran and its values system is inbuilt within us, because by virtue of following this, our own self develops. Our own potentials come out, which we were not even aware of previously. So this is where the Quran is pointing our attention, that we do have reward, but that reward is directly proportional to our self's development. 1152, criminal behavior defined. وَيَا قَوْمِي أَسْتَغْفِرُوا رَبَّكُمْ ثُمَّ تُوبُوا عَلَيْهِ يُرْسِلِ السَّمَاءَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِدْرَارًا وَيَزِدْكُمْ قُوَّةً إِلَىٰ قُوَّتِكُمْ وَلَا تَتَوَلَّوْا مُجْرِمِينَ. What I say to you is this, that in order to protect yourselves from the impending destruction due to your evil path, seek for the means of protection from the laws of Allah, and abandoning all of your batil beliefs, return to Him. Do you not witness the splendor of His Rububiyyat, how He irrigates your parched lands through rain, as a result of which your powers keeps multiplying day by day? The outcome of this should be that you provide proof of your being grateful by obeying His laws, not that instead you resort to tyranny and injustice, and like criminals turn your faces away from His laws. So where Quran has drawn their attention to all the facilities, all the pleasures of life they were getting from the land. Obedience of Wahi leads to certainty in life. Here a few points are briefly outlined for easy comprehension. Firstly, you want protection and security in the land and of the system under which you live. This can be yours if you decide to follow the guidance which I am communicating to you. It could also be pointing to the accumulation of power and wealth in few hands, that you, because of feeling insecure and vulnerable, those people who are empowered, you are accumulating power and wealth. Whereas the Quran is asking you that you don't have to do that. If you establish this system and there is more equitable distribution of wealth and also facilities for the development of the self, you will get protection and security under the system of Deen. Secondly, look at the aspects of rububiyyat towards which the wahi of Allah is drawing your attention. And part of this is to look at the outer world and the phenomena of nature from which you benefit on a regular basis. For example, the benefits of rain and agriculture through which your hard work give great return. And this product of yours multiplies as you put in more effort. So Quran has drawn their attention to signs of Allah in the physical world. The issue here is the distribution of the output of your land among your own people. And that is the focus of attention of the system of rububiyyat. And to that, the Quran repeatedly draws our attention. Thirdly, if you can witness the functioning of the laws of Allah in nature, in the physical domain, then why can't the laws given by Wahi benefit your social life? Your aim should be not to become criminals despite all these benefits of life which you are witness to. And that is important that the Quran says that the way you are living your life, it cannot continue like that because your self-destruction, your decline is inbuilt in the man-made system which you are trying to follow. So and as a result, you become criminals. And if you become criminals, how are you going to live a happy life and a life free from fear and huzn? Next verse 1153. Qalu Yahudu ma jetana bi bayyinatin wa ma nahnu bi tariki alihatina an qawlika wa ma nahnu laka bi mu'minin. They informed Hud that you have not presented any such reasoning for your claim which we can really consider as concrete evidence, because they didn't want to listen to him and they were following their religion very happily before Messenger Hud arrived on the scene. So if somebody is very happy the way they are living their life, they are not going to listen to anyone who talks rationally and with reason. We cannot abandon our gods just because you say so. And so we are not going to accept your invitation and become mu'mineen. Giving up religious beliefs is not easy. The response of the people to Hud was that your reasoning in support of the Wahi of Allah is not convincing, so it is not possible for us to give up our gods and obedience to them. This, of course, includes the rituals of worship too. These beliefs have a strong hold on human minds, and the society which such minds create will always have gross imbalances. This is because such minds simply cannot view life outside of their narrow self-interest. And that is the point to which Quran draws their attention again and again, that those who are students of the Quran should look at the self-interests which are holding these people back from the guidance of Allah. They rejected the message of Wahi and were never willing to bring any change in their wrong path. We see this continuing today as well, where people, despite accepting the Quran to be the revelation from Allah, are totally opposed to its pure guidance and are content to follow the convenience of rituals which satisfy their emotional needs. The idea that the Quran puts forward a system of Deen never crosses the minds of even those who read it frequently. Hence, as the Quran states that such people, وَمَا يُؤْمِنُ أَكْثَرُهُمْ بِاللَّهِ إِلَّا وَهُمْ مُشْرِكُونَ. We have gone over this verse in some detail in Surah Yusuf, and what it says is most of them do not have Iman in Allah without associating others with Him, and thus they commit shirk, and as a result they do not benefit. For example, up to the following rituals, they are okay, but once it comes to practically implementing the system of Deen, they don't want it. In fact, they detest it. Now we go to the next two verses, 54 and 55. Understanding the religious psyche is important. In naqulu illa atraka ba'du alihatina bisu'in qala inni ushhidullaha washhadu anni bari'un mimma tushrikun min dunihi fa iduni jami'an summa la tunzirun. It appears to us that because you have insulted our gods, the curse of one among them has become cast on you. This is why you have started to spout such nonsensical things, otherwise you were fine previously. So people who follow religious belief system, they think that these beliefs, these gods whom they are following, will curse those who oppose it. because for centuries they follow it, and these false beliefs are deeply embedded in their psyche. And even today, we will see that in that part of the world where there is not much education, people hold on to certain beliefs which have absolutely no rational basis. In reply, Hud only said this, and what else could have been said to people with this mentality, that I hold Allah as a witness, and you should also be a witness that whoever you declare from among non-Allah as being his partner, I have absolutely nothing to do with them. I'm totally free from this shirk. So despite opposition, and Messenger Hud and those with him, they keep telling others that the path you are following is a path of destruction, self-ruin. So give it up and come to the wahi of Allah. Whatever you wish to do against me, all of you gather together and do it, and do not give me any respite whatsoever. And then after that, see what is the outcome. And this part indicates that I'm sure they would have threatened him as well with some consequences, because religious people don't let their hold go easy on anything. And when they see some opposition to it, they feel threatened. And we can see in today's world as well that wherever some raw nerve is touched of the religion, people do stand up together and try to condemn those people who have raised the issue of pure Quran. The law of requital operates under all kinds of belief systems. Here we come across the trickeries of religious beliefs and their impact on the human psyche. When human beings accept religious beliefs as facts and do not use their intellect and reasoning to look at these logically, they become convinced that how can these be wrong when they have been the beneficiaries of these belies for centuries. Here the Quran has pointed to an important aspect of this, that not only do these people reject the way of Allah and refuse to use their rational reasoning side, instead they threaten the messenger that due to his going against their gods, he is going to suffer the consequences, i.e. these gods have the power to convey harm to those who oppose them. And it is possible that under the religious domain, they might be doing some bad mouthing against him as well, and praying to their gods as well, that this messenger who has created so many problems against us, so can you do something about him? This is an important aspect of the human psyche which is related to the functioning of the law of requital. If people do not apprise themselves with the functioning of the law, they simply cannot understand the issue of human accountability at the level of their psyche. The whole issue of the functioning of laws at the level of human selves remains obscure. So this is why it is important that in the education system, law of requital should be taught right at the basic level, and then children should be shown the evidence of its working in their own world as well as in the outer world. Further reflections on these two verses. Then the Quran states that having understood this important issue of the human psychological proclivity to contamination, say to such people that we do not subscribe to your false beliefs, which have serious consequences for the future. As this lead to shirk, hence life organized under such a belief system is living life at a subhuman level and will always lead to ruin in this world. And this is a very difficult task for anyone who has come to the Quran to make others understand that they are living at a subhuman level because they are not getting all those benefits and their latent potentials are not coming out with which they are endowed right at the time of their birth. And they don't have to live a life under fear and huzn or under the grips of these false beliefs, because false beliefs have a tremendously bad effect on human psyche. And such human beings can never bring out those latent potentials which can only manifest in the light of wahi. Since Mu'mineen tread on Sirat al-Mustaqim, fully conscious of their thoughts, words, and deeds, hence they declare clearly that you can do whatever you like, we will continue to follow our path. So those people who start following, who come to the pure Quran, understand it, and then try to follow it within the constraints of the society, other people think that they are misguided because they are looking at them from their own perspective. And religion leaves a very bad spell on human mind. And we know it, those who have come to the Quran, that how bad this spell is on human psyche. We just need to let the time of respite end, and then the law of requital will decide between us. Since the messengers of Allah were also human beings like us, hence we need to imagine and relate their cognitive state to our own under such circumstances. Because they were human beings just like us. So whatever we are going through, this process of learning and trying to understand the system of Deen and carry out this self-development, we should always relate to them when we are reading through these verses that they must be going through a similar situation in their own environment. These are always very patience-testing years in the lives of the messengers and those who had decided to be with them as mu'mineen. Next verse 1156, the path of Wahi is straight, not cyclical. Inni tawakkaltu ala Allahi Rabbi wa Rabbikum ma min dabbatin illa huwa akhizun bi nasiyatiha inna Rabbi ala siratin mustaqim. My trust is in the law of requital of Allah, which is very firm and trustworthy. This is the law of that Allah who is my Rabb and yours and the nourisher of everyone. Leaving aside you, there is not a living thing in the universe which is outside the domain of the grip of his law of requital. My Allah is on the straight and balanced path of haq and justice, and it is called Sirat al-Mustaqim. Hence, you should also follow behind him on this very path. Further reflections on this verse, Allah, recognizing the thought process of the messengers and mu'mineen, has spelled out the procedure here to be adhered to by them. Firstly, since they are following Wahi and as a consequence have become free from the contamination of shirk, i.e., they are wholeheartedly committed to this path after eliminating all kinds of doubts and suspicions. And it's a continuous effort. Doubts and suspicions do arise, and we have to counter them using the knowledge of the Quran and the higher state of development of our own self. Secondly, they are absolutely clear about the state of the psyche of those who refuse to come to the guidance of Wahi. The two ideologies are clearly defined, and the boundary between the two is demarcated based on evidence. This is an important point because it saves us from a lot of frustration when people do not respond to the Quran or to whom we give the message, or we see the state of the world around us. That people have made their own choices. And if Allah is not going to force them to change their choice, we simply cannot do that as well. Because the only self which has an access to us is our own. So if we look at it, our responsibility actually becomes very well defined. Thirdly, the opponents are challenged that they can do whatever they like. The messenger and mu'mineen are not going to budge an inch from their stance. Because they have seen the reality, they have seen the truth, they have seen haq, and they have seen the functioning of the law of requital, and they have seen the change which has come within themselves, that is within their own self, and the way it is developing. They come to terms with their own self-development because they know they couldn't have got this development without the help of Allah's Wahi. Fourthly, mu'mineen have placed complete trust in the laws of Allah and His support because now they know them and they know how these function, and they know He will help them to get through this phase of their striving in this path. The law of requital of Allah is such that nothing in the universe is outside its domain of operation. What is that path? Some more points of interest. The verse concludes by declaring, Inna Rabbi ala siratim mustaqim. Surely my Rabb is on siratim mustaqim. Let us outline some finer aspects of this reality. And this is the beautiful part of the verse where one says that my Rabb, that is the one who has given us the system of rububiyyat, we are following him. That is, we are making effort to establish the system of rububiyyat, and that is the Sirat al-Mustaqim because it is the shortest path to success, number one, and it's an established path which is based on evidence. Firstly, the Quran points to the aspect of rububiyyat that in order to reach our intended destination, we need to follow a certain well-defined path in life. Because if we live a life in which there is no aim, then that is the meaningless life. Then we go through the same animalistic procedures in this world and then die. Then what did we achieve? Nothing. Whereas Quran says it's a straight path which continues beyond death as well. And this path, following this path, is what we get because on this path then we experience the ups and downs of life, and that is how our self develops. At the start of the verse, it is firmly declared that Inni tawakkaltu ala Allahi Rabbi wa Rabbikum. You see the firmness in that statement from the lips of the messenger Hud. Fully trust in Allah, that is His laws, in relation to the aim of nourishment and development as defined by my Rabb and your Rabb, addressed to the human self. So they not only say that He is my Rabb, they also say He is your Rabb as well. Secondly, this path is sirat, i.e. straight, not cyclical. And secondly, it does not end somewhere so that we may think what next. Thirdly, it is mustaqim, it is established and balanced, i.e. whoever treads on this path becomes firmly established and his latent potentials emerge as attributes of his character. And this is the path defined by Allah. Hence, when we acquire that self which comes to terms with this path, then it obtains all the assurances and convictions associated with being on this path. Let us go to the next verse, 1157. Efforts on the path of Rububiyyat never go wasted. فَإِن تَوَلُّوا فَقَدْ أَبْلَغْتُكُمْ مَا أُرْسِلْتُ بِهِ عَلَيْكُمْ وَيَسْتَخْلِفُ رَبِّي قَوْمًا غَيْرَكُمْ وَلَا تَضُرُّونَهُ شَيْئًا إِنَّ رَبِّي عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ حَفِيظٌ. If you transgress from this path, then the responsibility for the consequences of this will not be on me. My responsibility was only this, that I pass on the message of Allah to you, which I have communicated. Now you will witness how the law of requital of Allah brings another nation in your place after destroying you in such a way. You will not be able to do anything to Allah. He is omniscient, watching over everything. Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen is meant to be established. And that is the important point which we should note over here. That if a Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen exists, then the Quran is telling that to be assured that you will replace these people who are opposing the message of Wahi. Here comes a firm commitment of the law of requital of Allah to Mu'mineen. The messenger who declares to his people that do not think that you will continue following your evil path like this and that nothing will happen to you. Not at all. Another set of people are getting ready to replace you, and if you have even a bit of being which is not clouded by your evil desires, then it is going to be myself and the Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen with me who are going to replace you. If you do not wish to meet the fate of annihilation, then it is better that you listen to what I say. Because what he is telling them is in their own interest as well, in their own benefit as well. If they have thought through it carefully, that if their life, physical life is cut short, then they are going to meet death far earlier than what they were thinking or assuming to meet at a later stage of their physical life. Why will this take place? Because this universe is created for constructed purposes, and here a time of respite is provided to batil ways of life. Once the warning has been served, then the process of replacement becomes accelerated and batil is replaced by al-haq. So the important point for us is in this verse that one set of people are replacing another set of people. And this is happening on two planes. Firstly, in any case, we die and we disappear, and some new people, new children, they come into the world and replace us. But collectively as well, one system of one nation is being replaced by another nation gradually, right in front of our own eyes. Of course, in the case of nations, it takes centuries. But the fact is that nations do disappear as well, and new nations emerge slowly and follow them. But in case Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen arrives on scene, then the whole process becomes far quicker. It gets accelerated. Who is going to do this? The divine attribute at the end sums it up by stating, Inna Rabbi ala kulli shay'in hafiz. When things go wrong beyond the laid down scale, then Rububiyyat demands that the divine attribute of Hafiz should take care of human affairs. The outcomes of human deeds lead nations to their own demise on the world scene. Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen need to keep in mind all the time. Next verse 1158, Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen need to strive with the certainty of their own protection. And this is important because Quran does give assurance to Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen that once they come into existence, then they get the protection of laws of Allah. And they know it themselves as well, and they take precautions as well. But there is something which they should keep it in mind, that if they are not protected, then there is they are not going to put in their best. So this is where the assurance of the Quran becomes very handy. وَلَمَّا جَاءَ أَمْرُنَا نَجَّيْنَا هُودًا وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَعَهُ بِرَحْمَةٍ مِنَّا وَنَجَّيْنَاهُم مِّنْ عَذَابٍ غَلِيظٍ. Subsequently, when the time arrived for the manifestation of the consequences of the evil path of that nation, then we kept Hud and his companions who had accepted Iman in Allah protected due to our rahmat from this severe punishment in which that nation was about to become engulfed. Further elaboration of this verse. Many years passed and the messenger Hud and Mu'mineen continued to pass on the message and warning to their people, and the majority did not pay any heed to it. When the time of respite came to an end, then the evil outcomes of their deeds became accumulated and manifested as destruction. The Quran calls it as Ja'a Amruna, that is according to Allah's law, Amr from Allah, i.e. as per the law of requital, the results of their evil appeared in the land. However, there was an exception to this destruction, i.e. providing protection to the messenger Hud and Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen with him, because they were forewarned and they were able to leave that place. Here the Quran has not gone into further detail, but elsewhere it has stated the nature of the punishment as well. Why were they saved? Because they were now to establish the system of Deen either in the same place or move to another suitable place. Here we need to assume this to be case as Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen had developed themselves during this struggle to that level of understanding that they could do this using the guidance of Allah. Because they had witnessed the imbalances created by the man-device system, and they had also had a good education and training and self-development under the way of Allah. And this was also part of the duty of the Messenger of Allah. Some more points of interest. In another place, the Quran states that the destruction visited them through a windstorm, which they initially thought to be a good omen. However, it was so severe that nothing remained except the ruins of their homes. The windstorm lasted over the course of some days. There is nothing for them in the hereafter. In verse 46-26, the Quran informs us that these people had developed rational reasoning faculties, but they did not make use of these and ignored the signs of Allah. The Quran says it is not that these were foolish people. They had learned all the tricks of the trades to exploit others and to enjoy their life, particularly those at the helm of affairs. Then they were completely encircled by that which they used to mock at. As noted in the account of the messenger, new people, especially those in power, do not hold themselves accountable and ignore any warnings and keep pursuing their tyrannical ways. Their power intoxicates them completely, and they live under this delusion that it is going to stay with them forever. We need to delve into the issues of the human psyche in order to understand the man-device systems and the psyche behind their functioning. This helps us to keep striving on the path of Allah and stay motivated. Because we also need, as we study the Quran and try to follow it within the constraints of the man-made systems, we need assurance as well. And this has to be evidence-based. So when we read through these verses and look at the finer aspects, then it gives us strength that same Allah is present today, and all these laws are applicable to us as well, as long as we do not give up this path and continue striving on this path with all our maximum efforts. 1159, nothing goes unnoticed in Allah's universe. وَتِلْكَ عَادٌ جَهَدُوا بِآيَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ وَعَصَوْا رُسُلَهُ وَاتَّبَعُوا أَمْرَ كُلِّ جَبَّارٍ عَنِيدٍ. This is the account of the nation of Ad, which rejected the laws of their Rabb and displayed rebellion against the invitation of their messengers, and continued to obey the rebellious and tyrannical rulers of theirs who used to deliberately oppose Haqq. So these rulers at the top were not alone. In fact, majority of the public supported them willingly. And that is important, we should keep in mind, because why do people conform to those who are at the top? Because of their immediate benefits. And secondly, they do not want to question their own beliefs. And one of the excuses which comes to their mind is that how can so many people be wrong for such a long time? Rather than going to the value system of the Wahi, which Allah presents, they think that what they have been doing for centuries is what the reality is. And that is what truth is. In this verse, Allah has summed up the whole account of the cause and destruction of the people of Ad. Allah did not do it to them. These people did it to themselves as they continued to go against the guidance of Wahi and were bent upon creating imbalances in the world. An interesting thing is that those people who follow religion and its belief system, they think everything comes from Allah. They do not see that it is their own conduct, it is their own injustices and tyranny and their own bad behavior, which is the cause of all the problems they are facing collectively. And whereas once we come to the Quran, we can exactly pinpoint where the problem lies. We know the cause and we know the effects. Firstly, they went against all the signs of Rububiyyat appearing before them, despite being reminded by Hud. For example, warned about the existence of imbalances in the society, priorities being wrong in erecting tall buildings and spending effort on construction which is without aim, creating problems instead of solving these and turning away from Deen. Secondly, rejecting the solution presented through the way of Allah. Because had they applied the rational side and looked at it logically based on evidence, they could have seen that things are not adding up and imbalances are increasing rather than decreasing. This was tantamount to going against Rububiyyat and thus hindering the path off to the intended destination of self-development. Another point to which Quran has pointed our attention elsewhere is that because of their egoistic build-up, because of their arrogance, they also thought that why should we accept this message from the messenger Hud, even if their hearts had accepted it. Thirdly, following those who acted unjustly and tyrannically in Allah's word, this is unacceptable to the divine attribute of Rabb and ultimately leads to ruin in this life, and there is no hereafter for such people. 1160, the last verse for today's presentation. وَأُتُّبِعُوا فِي هَذِهِ الدُّنْيَا لَعْنَةً وَيَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَلَا إِنَّ عَادًا كَفَرُوا رَبَّهُمْ أَلَا بُعْدًا لِعَادٍ قَوْمِ هُودٍ. The outcome of this was that they became deprived both in this life and the life of the hereafter, which is the future of the bounties of Allah. And when Quran says future, it means the physical life in this world as well. Just see that their physical life was cut short. Remember, all this occurred because they had rejected the laws of their Rabb, who is the bestower of the Rububiyyat. Just see how the nation of Ad became deprived of the bounties of life. Further reflections. This verse concludes the account of the people of Hud and describes the outcome for these rebellious people due to their evil conduct. They followed their unbridled desires, the consequence of which was loss in this worldly life, and since human life continues in the hereafter, hence they lost that as well. And we as a student of Quran should always keep this in mind, that the life goes beyond death. So when we are looking at the losses in this world, we should also look at the behavior of people, whether that behavior is going to give them another life after death or not. And this helps our own self-development. Here a question may arise in our mind that they did enjoy worldly conveniences during the period of time that they existed. The Quran sums it up by using the term lanatan, i.e. they failed to accrue the benefits associated with self-development as they never tried to come to grips with this reality. They did, some of them who were at the top of the system or hierarchy, they did enjoy some physical conveniences by exploiting others. But even in that, they were continuously under psychological pressure and stress and being scared of the majority of people around them. That is one. And secondly, their self never developed. And that is the lanat which the Quran draws our attention to in this verse. Why did the Ad suffer? Because they did kufr to the system of Rububiyyat. They never felt the need for the system of Deen because it was against their desire to continue to do evil in the world. They went for immediate benefits and never seriously considered the long-term benefits. They never faced their accountability or took into account the injustices they let loose on others. Now, the concluding remarks of today's presentation. The verse sums up the account by declaring that Allah bodan le adin qawmi Hud. Be aware, this was the removal of Ad, the people of Hud. And this is the perspective we should keep in mind from Allah's point of view, from His side, that these people We got rid of them because they were creating fasad in Allah's earth. And since Jamaat-e-Mumineen had formed and they stood up against them, so Allah's laws had to help Jamaat-e-Mumineen. And we can say that Allah wanted to help them because Allah has geared and directed everything towards the success of Jamaat-e-Mumineen. That is how the life of those who go against the laws of Allah by ignoring the admonition of Wahi ends. We have seen that in the decline of these nations, the Quran has pointed to a salient crime of each of them. It does not mean that these people did not have other forms of evil in their societies. By relating to the world of today, we can see clearly that in every country there are some major crimes, and some crimes which, though widespread, are not visible, and we only notice the glaring ones. For example, the crime of triggering of wars and conflicts in the lands of other people by a nation. So we can see even today those nations which launch wars and create conflicts and change regimes and these kind of things. Those are major crimes in the view of the Quran. Whereas other crimes are also rampant, but these are the ones to which Quran points our attention in these accounts. So far, we have seen that the crime of Pharaoh was that he divided his people into parties. The people of Nuh had divided their society on the basis of class differentiation. The people of Hud had become arrogant and were very tyrannical to fellow human beings in the unleashing of their unbridled power. So these are some of the things which we should keep in mind. And as we go through some more accounts, then we can sum it up towards the end that what are those major crimes which in the sight of the Quran are the ones which invite them total destruction of a nation. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen. Thank you.